Well, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, welcome to Michael and Friends. And today I'm welcoming a very, very special longtime friend. We go back more than probably 20 years now since we know
Yeah,
each other. And of course, I was once a violinist. You are still one of the greatest violinists in the
I'm
world.
still a violinist.
Somebody I've always looked up to tremendously as having been a violinist. And I remember you, Anne-Sophie, when you performed at the Jugendmusiziert in 1970, I think
Ah,
you got the first
yes.
prize. And I remember
Yeah,
that very
yeah.
well because my father came and said he heard you and said, such an unbelievable violinist, such a prodigy. And I thought, well, the hell, what am I going to do, you know? But
Ah,
here we are a couple of years
something much more
later.
useful having this wonderful festival and really,
Yes, yes, I
kind
think
of
but
visions. And,
I must say it was really stunning when you started back those in the 70s
Mhm.
and in 76. And I think every Luzerner is so proud of that. You gave your debut here in the St.
Yes.
Charles Hall
Yeah,
as a 13-year-old. What was that like?
yeah.
I mean, you still
It was very
remember?
hot.
Yeah.
It was very, very hot. I remember that. And I did a recital, which included Corelli Variations and Devil's Drill and the Falla Suite Populaire Espagnole, and also the chaconne, the entire chaconne with all, the movements at the end. And I also remember that I almost fell on my violin because coming into the living room, basically, because Megan is not a proper concert hall. It's just a
Right.
wonderful former private villa. And I think back then in the mid 70s, it was used for young performers to be presented. And so I was one of a trillion of other young performers, having the chance of a lifetime to perform in Luzern. And coming into the room, I almost fell over the carpet, which had a little, kind of tilted thing. So that's what I remember. And then nothing really happened after that performance other than I was exhausted and, of course, not satisfied. And
Not satisfied.
not satisfied. A few weeks later,
Why was
though,
that? Why weren't you satisfied?
I think it's my personality I'm a great dreamer. And I think that's something actually very positive because there's an endless possibility in the interpretation of a piece to go about it. And I'm absolutely non-dogmatic in my approach to music, which doesn't mean that I'm not well informed. And over the last decades, I also have been really very interested in the historically informed practice of playing, particularly music of the 18th century, obviously. But back then, I started a lifelong dream of what music really can be to people, and that the little scribbles of a composer, not meaning little in their intellectual contents, but the few informations we have being left in a score is very sparse. And if you talk to living composers, Mrs. Badulina, she used to say, it's like I have this incredible explosion of sounds and clusters and harmonies and in my ear when I'm kind of receiving a piece, and then I have to sit down and I have to write it down fast. And sometimes in the process of writing it down, I'm finding out that I have heard and envisioned sounds and in a register which there is no instrument to really bring it to life. So what I am actually writing down is just a mere shadow of what really I want to express as a composer. So somehow I must have felt it, kind of instinctively when I was young, very young. So that's why I was dissatisfied, because I knew that, I could get much closer to what the composer wants in the Devil's Drill. And that, of course, technically, sky is the limit. And a few days after this recital in Megan, I think my father got a call of Herbert von Karajan's private secretary, Mrs. Salzburger. And I was invited to audition for him in Berlin the same year. And I was frightened to death. So I told my father, listen, I need a vacation and hoping that, of course, Berlin would forget that this little girl, you know, was supposed to come there. And I hoped actually that, that it would go away. Because I knew that it would be my Waterloo, you know, going to play for Herbert von Karajan. Are you kidding me? I was 13, my repertoire was tiny. I just a few years earlier had started to study at the Conservatory in Winterthur, close to Zurich, with a formidable violinist, Aida Stucki. She was a pupil of the great Karl Flesch, the greatest pedagogue, really, a violin pedagogue in history, who has written such incredible volumes about the sound problem and why fingerings and phrasing. I mean, you must have studied him also upside down.
Yes, Flesch was one of the first composers I met as well.
Yeah, the scale system.
Kreutzer.
Yes. Yeah. So anyhow, when I came back from my vacation, they had renewed my invitation to come to Berlin. So in December of 76, I traveled to Berlin with Aida Stucki, and on the 11th of December in 1976, I played for Herbert von Karajan. I met him there backstage in his conductor's room, which still is there in the Berlin Philharmonie. And every time I'm playing there, I'm reminded of this moment when this physically not overly tall and large person came into the room, but he had such an incredible presence. And of course, I had already, you know, listened to so many of his recordings, and I was totally starstruck. And he obviously tried to make me feel a little, you know, plus à l'aise, because age-wise, I'm in between his two daughters, Isabella and Arabella. So the atmosphere was actually very friendly and warm, and he asked me what I wanted to play, and I suggested a Mozart concerto and the chaconne. He said, yeah, I have a concert this evening, and of course, you know, I cannot listen to the entire chaconne, so why don't you just play a little of it? So I went into the hall of the Berlin Philharmonie. Some orchestra members were sitting there and ready, you know, to do this probably, like an old Rome, ancient Rome. And I started with the chaconne, and I played and played and played and played, and the 20 minutes were over, and he hadn't interrupted me, and I didn't know what to do. So I played some Mozart concerto, and after that, you know, I ran out of repertoire basically, and we ran out of time. So I went to pack my violin, and when I came back into the hall, he was ready to leave. He had previously talked to my teacher, and he said, I'm very happy to play with you next year at the Whitsun Festival in Salzburg. And I'm still astounded that, you know, and that of course changed my life completely. I continued my studies with Aida Stucki, who became, you know, a very close friend also. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman and an incredible violinist and pedagogue. But Karajan, together with her, started to select what repertoire I would, you know, work at. So I started with to work with Mozart, and then we recorded Mendelssohn and Bruch. And it really, I was barely 16. He suggested I should do the Beethoven. Once again, I felt, Jesus Christ, this is not a good idea. I don't feel ready for it. Please, let's not do it. But anyhow, when Karajan tells you, do the Beethoven, you do the Beethoven. So again, Luzern played a very important role, because he invited me to play the Beethoven just without any kind of engagement inside, but just to study it with him. And that was still in this strange hall, you know, back. Yeah, exactly, the Kunsthaus. Very strange hall where they didn't even have a proper backstage area, you know? You were separated from the conductor.
Were changing together with the orchestra, very weird situation. Yeah. I mean, I actually saw, you know, the greatest conductors changing there, and the orchestra musicians were right next to them, more or less. Yeah. Very awkward.
And you felt so intimidated, because you also couldn't warm up, because the conductor would be just away, you know, only like a little draping was in between the two of you, so you would basically never warm up. Anyhow, I went there, I played a few bars for Karajan, just the beginning, you know, the octaves and the scales up, and he looked up and very dryly said, come back next year.
Oh.
So there was my Waterloo. I knew it. Finally, the Waterloo came, and I survived it, because I knew that I wasn't ready. Are you ever ready for the Beethoven Violin Concerto? I don't know, but I certainly wasn't at 16. And so he took a year later. I came back to Luzern. He was in a hotel, and he had a hotel room, like a convention center, reserved for our rehearsal. And that was the afternoon where we went through the score, and he was reading through the score with me and explaining me the score and the role of the violin. And very often, as you know, as a wonderful violinist, it is not a purely solistic violin concerto in the classical sense. It is really very symphonic. And you grow out of the orchestra ever so often, and you have to get back into the orchestra material. And we were rehearsing, and I was playing until it was actually dark. And that was, like many other musical, moments I had with him, totally life-changing.
But he told
Never
you,
met. Yeah.
when you came the first time, he told you to come back a year later. Wow. I think that's something probably conductors can't do today. You have to find maybe more diplomatic variations. But
yes, but I knew that he was well-meaning and that he wasn't harsh. But first of all, he was right, and secondly, I knew that he would help me in the process of understanding the composition and so many more pieces of music. And I'm eternally grateful to Herbert von Karajan for taking me under his wings for 13 years until his death. Because if I look around today, with conductors and the relationship between conductors and soloists, singers, instrumentalists, whatever, I have a foundation, as you know, now for almost 25 years in Adolf Young String Players, and we work worldwide to provide scholarship and, also the kind of connections to conductors and agents and so on and so forth. And having had a mentor like Karajan in such a intensely important, life-changing period of my life in my early teens, that really is still like a library of knowledge, of musical knowledge I have under my belt since then, a library of which I'm still living off in a sense. And there are, to put it diplomatically, not many conductors these days, if any, who take that much time to spend it with the young generation of singers. Think of Karajan. I mean, 2 generations of singers really were going through his life and through his productions, and he would always take time and explain and help them to phrase and help them to understand music, which didn't mean that you had to dogmatically follow what he said, but basically looking back in much of what his philosophy of music making was, it's still actual today, because never mind, of course, his strange tradition of doubling the winds and, the way they...
But there are a couple of other conductors who have that tradition as well.
That's true. And then the Mozart in the 80s,
sing a song.
And Baroque music, I mean, in the 80s, the kind of sound concept. But intellectually, and how he made us listen to each other, I think that was the key. That was really the key why the orchestras he worked with for so many decades were such intensely finely shaped instruments, because we had learned to, and sometimes I think his slightly unprecise way of conducting, just kind of, you had no idea, well, what is it now? Do we start now or in a minute or in 10 seconds? And you learned to feel each other. And it was chamber music on the highest level, and playing with him was like flying. It's very tough in the rehearsals. Boy, was he tough. But in the concert, he would just stand there. He used to say conducting an orchestra is like riding a horse, and you have to, jump over this hurdle. So the orchestra has to do it. I mean, the orchestra has to play, obviously, but bringing all of us in the perfect position to let loose and to go for it. That is the role of the conductor, and that's what he did.
And he was an incredibly important man for the Lucerne Festival. Without him, we wouldn't be what we are today. And he helped build the renommee, and of course, also he helped to build the new hall.
Yep.
And he was an incredible figure. Unfortunately, I never really met him personally.
You didn't?
No, I remember performances with the Berlin Philharmonic when I lived in Berlin. One was the St. Matthew Passion, which was one of the longest St. Matthews I ever remember. My father was the tenor in it, but I think there were like 8 basses, and it was long. It was more than 4 hours. At the time, it was 10 was lower, but he was an incredible and I think unbelievable figure. And you certainly, I think, for your career, it was very decisive.
Yes.
But without Anne-Sophie, it would have never happened. And you gave him a lot too, and of course, all the other artists you've worked with. By the way, just by chance, I ran into a video of the Beethoven Triple Concerto. With you, Yo-Yo Ma, and Daniel Barenboim a couple of years ago. And just the second movement.
Oh, I think that's actually from, isn't it from 2020? No, it's from 2019. It's 2019. Yeah.
Amazing, as the Americans say,
but Yo-Yo, I mean, playing with Yo-Yo.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, there's a lot of vibrato, but oh, wow. Unbelievable. And I mean, the three of you were
it
fantastic.
felt so wonderful, this collaboration. And then with the West East Divan Orchestra, that was a dream come true for me to play this also with this ensemble, because the philosophic idea behind it is I think what we all, you with your festival and with diversity next year as one of the main.
We shouldn't talk about that. That's next year.
Let's cut it out.
This year we're crazy, as you know.
Crazy.
Our theme is crazy this summer.
Aren't you always crazy? I mean, not you personally, but
Swiss cannot be
your
crazy.
Wonderful.
Swiss cannot be crazy. We're too disciplined for that. Yeah, no, we can be. And but that was a great performance. That was a stunning performance. And
but making it once again chamber music. I often have to think of the quote Mendelssohn, who said, chamber music is like a conversation between educated friends. There you go. And in a way, music on the highest level of connecting to each other is always a kind of chamber music. And this misconception sometimes people who are non-musicians have, that a soloist is standing there in front of the orchestra and the rest is kind of wiping the floor. The understanding must be that we are all in a joint effort together and we all have our roles to play, and one cannot live without the other. The orchestra not without the soloist and the conductor, but it goes both ways.
But you're also a fantastic ambassador for contemporary music. I think over the past decades, you have promoted contemporary music in different, styles and then, of course, dimensions. But that's one of your also major contributions to music is having performed all these new works. And
can I put my dog up because she's yelping?
You like contemporary music?
It's useless, actually. To be honest, no. Particularly when it's really severely contemporary. My other dog, who sadly died 2 years ago, she used to, when it was really too crazy, she used to look at me. Are you kidding? And then she would leave. And once I would go back to Mozart, the Wiener Classic, she would come back and be. So in a way, my dogs are my testers for contemporary music. When they leave the room, I'm very doubtful about the quality of the piece.
But you have been a great ambassador. I think in 2007, you performed the Gubardulina Concerto in Tempus Presens.
Yes, that's correct.
The Berlin Philharmonic and Simon Rattle. I remember that fantastic. And Gubardulina is, as you said, very close to you. A very special personality. She will be turning 90 next year, I believe. And still going strong. And then, of course, there was also your strong and very devoted relationship with Andre Premin, who opened up,
Yes.
I believe, other chapters in your musical understanding.
Yes.
And it was, of course,
Yes,
you were
definitively.
married for,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I know, and then I saw.
And we also did the, yeah, I think we also did the premiere in Luzern.
Yeah,
Didn't we do
the tango.
Tango Song and Dance? It must have been the Europe.
That was the world premiere in
at least.
Lucerne, 2001.
Wasn't it the world premiere? Yeah.
When you had your residency.
And Andre exactly came because it was recited with Lambert, and then Andre would join us just for Tango Song and Dance. Yeah, I mean that he was such an incredibly gifted man. My God, he never practiced. He would study always. He would always sit with the score, but he never practiced the piano. And so often I was witness, not only when we played chamber music together, that he would sit backstage, he would talk to everybody, have a tea, and then the concert stagehand would come and say, you know, Andre, it's time. And he would take the last sip of tea, go on stage, play Rhapsody in Blue, play Mozart, whatever. There was such a ease in his music making, in his phrasing. I was so glad he didn't take up the violin because, you know, there was just that little space for me. And his
I remember
jazz
him, you know, he used to come to Juilliard when I was a student, and he did a couple of rehearsals.
Cool.
Whenever he came, it was like enlightenment. And he had such a good way of talking to us. You know, we were kids, but we were like eating whatever he had to say.
Yeah.
And those are the incredible personalities. But he also was a composer, and you know, he was also he built up relationships between jazz and classical music.
Yes.
He overcame borders, which
definitively. He was instrumental for me to, first of all, for the Korngold Concerto, and then secondly, to delve into repertoire like Gershwin, but also Elgar, Walton, but particularly the Korngold, you know, where we all, of course, adore the two recordings Heifetz has done, and I was extremely reluctant to play the piece, never mind recording it. And it was Andre who said, listen, you don't necessarily have to hide here, so let's you know, let's work on it together. And he also wrote, I think he wrote about 12 pieces for me, of which not all have been performed actually. And he also wrote me something very sweet, because he used to give me long after we were divorced, because we stayed very close friends. And he gave to me a jazz improvisation, which of course, once you write it down, it's not an improvisation anymore, because but I can't improvise. So he did Sophisticated Lady. He wrote that down. So one of these days I will play that as an encore, and I'm greatly looking forward to it.
Yes, but that's a wonderful commitment you have, and you maintain. I think your newest strong relationship is now with John Williams. I think there's a premiere coming up.
That's also thanks to Andre. Yeah, because they used to be closest friends when they were young. They were almost the same age. And Andre gave John his first engagements as a conductor, also at the Boston Pops. And they stayed extremely close. Actually, they were supposed to do a book together, Conversations. Imagine Conversations between John Williams and Andre Previn. What a book. Sadly, it didn't happen. But John, of course, I mean, I grew up with the music of John Williams. And I remember, you know, I grew up at the foot of the Black Forest, close to Switzerland. And I saw Star Wars in 1978. And of course, visually, you know, it was exhilarating, but I was blown away by the themes, by the leitmotifs, and by just the depth, the musical depth of these characters. I mean, they had so much substance, musical substance. I would have never, although I'm a dreamer, but that was just outside of even dreaming that I would meet John Williams, and that he would rewrite about, I think now 16 of his most famous film titles for violin. Is so cool.
There's a good recording.
Oh, it's just, I know that in your festival it's probably never going to happen, but the violin concerto is really
How do you know?
Piece. Okay. No, that
No,
would be
Lucerne is
super
open-minded.
cool.
You know, we have our beliefs and we go our ways, but we're
Yeah,
also open
yeah,
for new ideas.
yeah.
And at first, I thought,
And John is
no,
John
first,
is a great composer, as you know. I mean, he has written so much, so many concertis, of course, for fabulous colleagues. Perlman, plays quite a bit of John's classical scores, if we want to make the distinction between film and classic scores. And of course, Yo-Yo Ma, for example. And he has now just finished his second violin concerto, John, which is a 4-movement concerto, big orchestra, huge solo parts also for harp and the percussion, because there's a cadenza between the percussion and the violin. It's really fabulously written, wonderfully orchestrated. And I'm actually deeply humbled witnessing this compositorial process, because basically John started with it in the pandemic year, and I think now in a few days he's going to send me the final version for the world premiere, which is going to take place in Tanglewood, July of 2021. And the meticulous precision and total dedication and passion this great composer has is second to none, really. To always go back and find something he thinks he can improve. And it's so much honesty and dedication in this process that you can only be humbled, being witnessed.
we had a crucial meeting in Salzburg together, remember, with Pierre Boulez. And we had a dream together to realize the violin concerto, the Anthem 2. That was a dream that came from Paul Sacher, by the way.
Yes.
A great,
many decades ago,
personality for the Lucerne Festival, and also, a great support of
my life.
Mutter.
Yes.
And he had, I believe the idea came from him even, did it not? For a new violin concerto by Pierre Boulez.
Do you mean Paul's idea? Yes, it certainly was Paul's. It wasn't Pierre Boulez's idea. Poor man. He was totally. I think Paul drove over him and kind of presented him with the idea.
Is that true?
Yes, as it was Paul Sacher's way of just announcing what he wished for, and then it would happen. So I think it was. And actually, the Goodbye Dulina in Tempus Presens, I was so fortunate to meet Paul Sacher, who was a very close friend of Aida Stucki, in the 80s, because then in the mid-80s, I started to, as I lived close by on the other side of the Rhine River, in the mid-80s, I started to meet all the great composers who later wrote for me. I met Penderecki in his house, whose partial premiere of the Polish Requiem I heard in Stuttgart. Then I met Lutosławski, who became the first composer whose works I ever played. I mean, he was my first living composer experience with Chain 2 and then the orchestrated version of Partita. And Norbert Moret, a totally forgotten, also Swiss composer, with his wonderful En Rêve, very poetic violin concerto. And then Goodbye Dulina. I mean, this all came through Paul Sacher. And I remember when I turned 30. That could be the time. When I turned 30, he asked me what I wanted for my birthday. And of course, for a moment, I was thinking maybe a Cadillac or a yacht or a helicopter. But then, of course, I went for the violin concerto by Penderecki. And that metamorphosis then came in a time where my husband fell ill and died. And I played the premiere about a month before, actually less than a month before I had to put my husband to rest. So Penderecki's Metamorphosen became a very personal, almost autobiographical piece, particularly also because the title Metamorphosis, how we try to live with the loss of a loved one is an interesting moment in life, and we all need to find a way to deal with that. And certainly Penderecki's music has helped me. So I love contemporary music because all these new languages are intellectually so inspiring and challenging. And of course, it's frightening. I find it extremely frightening, as I'm already nervous to death about the artist piece, which is
yeah, we talk about that later.
Not yet written, and I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, and it's wonderful to survive these...
I have good news.
You have good news? Okay.
Coming along, I hear.
Okay, so the arms are ready and the legs, everything is on the piece.
Yeah. But you know, there are those composers who just write and it's done.
Yeah.
It just comes. And then there are those, like also writers in literature. There, you know, it just doesn't come. They feel they have no idea, so they're dissatisfied. I mean, Bruckner wrote so many editions of his symphonies, and because he was never satisfied in this creative process. And you know, Boulez, after a certain age, he always wanted to compose, and he always was a composer, but he ended up not only, but he was a great conductor, but he couldn't write anymore. So there's like the fountain sort of closes down.
Oh, really?
I remember the meeting. He was so nervous about this meeting with you because he had greatest respect for you, and his greatest dream would have been to write a concerto for you, but he knew he wasn't going to do it for some reason. He never said it, but I saw it, I felt it. And this incapacity of somebody who is, you know, who was also a great genius.
Absolute genius.
We all worship.
I remember when I did the Berg concerto with him, that was some of the most amazing experiences in my life. First of all, he came into my room like 30 minutes before we did with the LSO, the Berg concerto, 30 minutes before my part of the rehearsal started, and he gave me a sheet of paper and said, you know, here are all the passages where the 12 tonal system is broken, and you need to correct it. And I was looking at this was coming. Okay, time is running. So, I mean, that was incredible. The way he was able to balance the orchestra, the clarity he brought to the Berg concerto, which is overloaded in ideas and really problematic to perform live, and very often comes best to life in a recording where, you know, a clever sound engineer is able to bring the Haupt- and Nebenstimmen to life. But how Pierre Boulez was able to bring that on the live stage was second to none. Really exceptional understanding of, you know, balancing the inner voices of the orchestra. Wonderful.
He said one famous quote he made at the Academy once is to follow is to follow, to be with is to be with. And it's a great statement he meant. You know, it's not only about following it, but it's to be together. It's to think together when you make music. And that I remember forever.
Yeah,
statement.
to believe together. Yeah.
He was an incredible guy. But his dream was to write a concerto and he couldn't fulfill it. Well, maybe you play Anthem once still.
Maybe, well, one of these days,
As we are, you know, still building the relationship between the Lucerne Festival and you, and I will make strong efforts in
I'm always for strong efforts. My second name is Strong Efforts, Michael. So.
Strong efforts. Yeah, you know, I mean, you've done great, incredible things, and we all know that you will still be influencing the world like very few artists, very few human beings. You've just been, you know, announced as the new chairman of the Krebs, Deutsche Krebshilfe. You have your own foundation. Your role in society is very important, and you're taking big responsibility in that. How do you see yourself? I mean,
I love people. I love this wonderful blue planet. I wish we would live more consciously, carefully, and respectfully with the environment, with each other. As I love people, particularly children and elderly and people with special needs, that has been one of the great fulfillments of Here We Go with Dreams Again. I became a musician, I think, because I I wanted to make the world a better place. Because Menuhin was my big role model. You know, I remember when my mother, I must have been 10 or 12, told me with still tears in her eyes, what it felt like that Menuhin came back to Germany, and he was the first Jewish musician who did so after the Second World War, what that meant for them, for the music lovers, for the Germans.
And he was one of the first to pardon the Germans as well.
Yes, yeah. And so I suddenly understood that music, I also intellectually understood, not only, you know, instinctively, that music can be more than just a pastime or, you know, something you kind of consume. That it can have a deeper meaning in a society. Look at the West Eastern Divan Orchestra. Look at what happens when children sing together. What kind of bond there is, and how we could learn from each other's cultural roots by having more music in preschool, you know, situations, and just respectfully learning about each other's different traditions through music. So anyhow, I have this orphanage in Romania, which now has become a kind of private project because Lambert and I did several recitals for this orphanage. It came about because I read in a newspaper that there are, like in many other countries, you know, young girls who don't have a school degree, basically no future. There are two possibilities. Either you marry someone, you know, basically not by your free will, or you go into prostitution. And I read this article in a German newspaper at a time where my own daughter was about 15 or 16, and it shocked me. I just couldn't sleep anymore. So I called up the German Red Cross, who became and still is a wonderful a wonderful partner for benefit projects. And I called them up and said, listen, we have to do something in Romania. We have to, you know, find a place for young girls to be safe, to have a home, to be able to finish their school, and we must collect money. Tell me what we can do. Back then, Lothar Späth still was alive. He was a very prominent German politician, very much affiliated with the Stuttgart ballet company, for example. So someone who not only was into politics and into economy, but very much aware of the necessity to keep up the arts. To make a long story short, we found donors, and we were able to build a house. And now over 100 children, you know, live there with a wonderful surrogate mother. She's just an incredible person. And it's wonderful to see that you cannot change the entire world, but every one of us can, with not a maximum effort, but with some effort, change the lives of a few people. And that adds up over time. So this is one of my many, many projects I'm doing on the side of concertizing.
So you've always been very strong throughout the past month in trying to bring the arts back on stage. You have been very, very active in that. And now, of course, with the vaccinations improving and everything,
yes,
we hope to be back. And then we're certainly going to celebrate a fantastic summer festival in Lucerne with you. But I mean, this has been an incredibly hard time. Let's be honest. I mean, for me and for the promoting business, for of course the artists and the freelance artists, no jobs, no income. Could we ever?
It's a tragedy, really.
That?
Yeah. I mean, the pandemic year, of course, is a tragedy because of many, many people, the millions of people who died alone. That is, I think, what makes COVID so horrible. Dying is horrible, but alone, there's nothing worse than for the person who has no hand to be held, for a mother who cannot see their children for the last time. So that is something which, you know, I think inspired most of us to stay home and you know, follow all the rules and you know, of course, cut back on all our freedom and liberties, because most of us wanted to be, you know, helpful and save lives. But in the process of sitting home and not working, not being permitted to work, that is true for all of us artists. In the process, many of us have been ruined, financially ruined. I know of a lot of also young artists who, you know, they have started other jobs. Nothing against having a job on the side, you know, why not? It's not a question of being too high, you know, I'm too kind of high for that. That's not the point. The point is that, as you know, Michael, when you're an artist, you are an artist 24/7. And you need to dedicate all your mental and your physical strength. If you're a dancer, a singer, and, you know, an instrumentalist, you cannot drive a taxi 8 hours a day and still be an artist on the top level. So many of us had to make a decision. And because of survival issues, we have lost a lot of great artists. Look what happens in the US. I mean, New York Philharmonic, there are orchestras and there are ensembles who carry history, music history. These are like trees. They are not 2-year-old trees. These are like 100-year-old trees with a memory, with collective historic memory. And once they are wiped out, it's like an old oak when she falls. It's gone, forever gone. It's nothing we can, you know, just push a switch. And this is what has frustrated me so much in German politics, because there came a moment then after, I think it was in November. So that was the third shutdown. We basically have lived in Germany since November in a permanent lockdown. Since just now, I think now in Bavaria, I'm now in Austria, they have loosened the rules, and because the numbers are much better. So we had all these concepts, probably the same in Switzerland, I don't know, the pilot studies, you know, the Opera House in Munich has done it, the Philharmonic has done it. Yeah. To make a long story short, despite all these really very informative and very carefully researched hygienic concepts under which one could have continued some kind of cultural, particularly museums, for example, you know, leave that open, to have some kind of haven for people's souls, being limited to buying toilet paper and watching Netflix is just, you know, it's not what we humans are. We are more than that. Anyhow, in November, a politician decided to put us in the same category with what's that? You know, prostitution and swimming, you know, and music. I mean, basically, we are all the same. Our fields of work will have to wait until everything else has been opened. And that felt very strange. And for a moment, I was very tempted to collect all my high German decorations, you know, also my high Bavarian decorations and all these crosses and things, and just give them back and say, listen, now we are in need of some kind of respect and that someone listens to us. I don't need this decoration. It doesn't mean anything if there is such a lack of respect for the arts and for the needs also of us people, not only artists, but the other side, the audience.
Also, if an artist loses the stage, he loses part of his, it's like an organ. I mean, the stage is
you are amputated. You are just amputated. Yeah. And how can... Yeah, and I think it's like when Federer had his surgeries and he didn't play for a year. Of course, he trained like crazy, and he will come back now next week to play. But it's very different to train, or to really perform in front of an audience. This is different for football. This is different for soccer. I mean, it's different for tennis, and it for sure is different for music. Because without the other end, you know how it is as a violinist. You know, the silence in a full hall is different than the silence in your empty living room. And music, it's like an installation of Mrs. Abramovich, where you sit, nothing really happens. and she looks into your eyes, and something happens then, because two humans are sharing space and time together. And the same is in concerts. No streaming in the world can ever replace a live performance. And living in such isolation is difficult for everybody, has been very difficult for everyone. But particularly, I guess, for artists who not only have lived in isolation, but our identity has been taken away from us.
How do you think we will come back?
Tempi passati.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're, of course, fighting our way back. Yeah. But how will we come back? How will Corona change the entire business of?
I want to ask you this, the same question. Yeah. I'm under the impression, particularly after what happened in Berlin when they did their pilot study and were selling the tickets for 1,000 people in 3 minutes. Free.
I'm convinced we come back. I'm convinced we come back. I think some things might change. There won't be maybe as much touring as traveling. There might be, also in the sense of now the ecological thinking developing in our society, which obviously is important. And so
better train system.
I think that might change. There might be adjustments, but I think the live character is going to be stronger than ever. And if there was ever any fatigue before, in any way, where we're always worrying about, what do we have to do to sell a ticket? And then now I think we might even perhaps get back to the more purist approach of a concert is a concert, a ticket is a ticket. And coming back into maybe a more different.
I'm very optimistic too, but we should not overlook the fact that this pandemic has also left a generation of music students clueless and kind of in shock, because becoming a musician has never been easy, also economically, mentally, and being left alone and seeing that the needs of artists have come very, 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 very last on the list of political agendas is, of course, a signal which, let's say, is not inspiring for a young generation of, it's not only musicians, but it's, it's writers, it's actors.
But, I think things can come back. And I just spoke to a friend of mine in New York yesterday, and I said, how is New York? And it was a disaster. I mean, New York was probably one of the towns hit most severely. But now he said, beautiful, the weather is great, people are out in the park. That's New York. Forget the past, look ahead. And I think that will come back. I'm convinced once we sort of found our ways how to deal with the COVID virus, with the vaccinations, certain changes in our behavior. But I think we need to be optimistic.
Definitely.
That's why, and I think you project that incredibly well, looking ahead.
But the more important is to help a young generation, as the Luzern Festival is doing it, to keep on doing that, because we need to reinforce this wonderful endeavor of having generations after generations of young musicians travel the world by train, hopefully, or by foot or by bicycle, but exchange their cultural worlds and ideas.
Yeah,
I have to sneeze.
God bless you.
Sorry.
God bless you. At Lucerne now, we almost close to half of our performances are with young performers or for young audiences. Contemporary music with the Academy and Music for Future. And that's great. And I think that we will change. We will change in our thinking and in our approach. Never. We always need the extreme high, performance
goals.
Like you. But also to be open and to be a part of everyday life. And that will change probably. But talking to you really is so invigorating, and
thank you. Same to you, Michael.
And I think, one human being can change the world. And I think in your case, that's certainly reality. And so we have great hopes in your future, and also
definitively
into all of our
the
projects.
Sky is the limit.
And there will never be a dull moment, that I'm convinced. At least also about my life. I just turned 60. And
2 times 30 times 30.
One thing I realized is that I'm never bored. And you always, I'm also very unhappy many times, impatient, not satisfied. I think in this way we
sounds
share.
familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also always somehow excited and believing that tomorrow will be better than yesterday. I think that's
definitely, because we will hopefully shape the tomorrow. You will for sure, and that's why it's going to be a better tomorrow. That's for sure.
You, and also being a great female personality, that's fantastic. What you have achieved, and coming from being your generation, having achieved what you achieved as a woman is outstanding. Yeah. The only thing missing is maybe the Mahler Symphony and the Bruckner Symphony in 20 years, That's a great thing. Bernard Haitink.
We never know.
Herbert von Karajan just conducted the Eroica at the age of 92. So
incredible. But it's not the length of life, it's the quality and the intensity. So
but imagine being 92 and conducting Brooklyn 4. That must be a great feeling with the Vienna Philharmonic. I'm sure they will.
Even better, imagine playing violin with 92 and playing well. That's of course absolutely impossible. That is totally impossible. But
you will make it.
Life is so interesting, and there are so many things one can do. And as I mentioned, my foundation, which is really very meaningful to me, and being a mentor is wonderful, and having a lot of young women who kind of take me on as their second mother. And as I've always loved children, it's just great to see how the life of a musician can have so many in so many fields meaning to others, and maybe also inspire others to also become mentors and passing on. I'm basically passing on what Karajan and my wonderful violin teacher Ida Stucki have taught me. Also the work ethic, also the looking to the others and trying to be helpful to society. All of that. That is what I have been fed with. So I'm just passing it on. I haven't invented it. But it's a great joy to passing it on and honoring my great teachers.
Anne-Sophie, thank you so much for sharing these incredible
insights. Thank you very much for your time, Michael.
Michael and friends, and we see you again on September 7th in Lucerne.
Definitely.
Absolutely. With César Franck, Beethoven's Spring Sonata, and also the E minor by Mozart.
Yeah.
We're tremendously looking forward. Thank you for being with us.
Me too. Thank you very much, Michael, for having me. And thank you for being such a wonderful friend.
Munich, and what do you think about Bayern Munich being the new champs again?
Oh, how about that?
Surprise.
You must be in delirium in happiness. Oh. So here's my little doggy waving.
The children.
She's also a Bavarian fan. So.
Oh, she is. Where's the T-shirt?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it's in the washing machine.
Couldn't be. Did you order the new ones with the new logo for the championship? Yeah, you can. I sent you the link.
Okay. Oh, please do. Absolutely. Yeah. I have to go online right away. Book something for my son too.
Thank you so much.
Michael. Thanks very much for your time. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.